The Bucks, as critical as I am of them / Doc Rivers, I have never shut the door completely because the upside of this team, if Chris Middleton is playing like he did tonight, is a championship. The upside is a championship. Now, are they going to get there? I don't know. I doubt it, but I haven't closed the door completely. Welcome back to the Kenny Beecham podcast, playoff edition time, man. It feels great to be back to our 2 times a week schedule. This weekend is like no other. This is one of my favorite. I'm taking first weekend of the playoffs over All-Star weekend 100 times out of 100. It's basically 12 hours a day of nothing but pure hoops, and it was fantastic. This year was different for me, though, man. It was different for me. For the last, let's say, 6-7 years, as long as I've been doing this full time, so closer to 9 years, I've been able to sit down on this first weekend and not have a care in the world about anything else. Strictly hoops. But now I have a toddler. You know, when she's 1 year old or a newborn, like my daughter was born in April, so she was born in the playoffs last year, right? And I have a story that I normally don't tell people, but hey, we in this together, right? We had Avery, got home, got to watch some playoff games, and we had to go back to the hospital because she had jaundice, which is not that big of a deal, but you need to get it checked out, right? It was the Denver Nuggets in the first round of the playoffs. We're sitting around in the hospital. It's on this little old monitor, little old TV screen. And I'm like pacing watching this game because obviously my daughter's in the hospital. I don't know nothing about jaundice, but also I'm like, this is my time for content. And my wife, well, then fiance, sees me pacing. She's like, if you want to go home for 30 minutes to film a video, you can. And I did. And then everything was great. Obviously, Avery's 2 years old now. She's singing her ABCs. She's singing the Miss Rachel Rainbow song all damn day. Is perfect. But because she is a toddler, and there's a lot more things that she can get into now that she's running and jumping and skipping, there are times I have to step away from the TV, and that was just not normal for me. It's not normal for me. Now, if it happened on Saturday, I was able to go back and rewatch the things that I missed. But today I'm saying that because like the first half of Pelicans OKC, I kind of missed the entire thing because I was in solo pop mode. You know what I'm saying? It's on the TV, but I'm also trying to make sure my daughter's doing things that she should be doing. But we'll be talking about every single series today. All 8 of those series. And the way we're going to frame this thing is one thing that I liked and one thing I didn't like about every game. Another really cool thing about the playoffs is that majority of the stuff I'm going to mention in today's episode is going to be like irrelevant in 2 days. Because it's about coaching, it's about chess, it's about this, it's about that. I'm going to talk about some of the things I really liked from a particular coach or a particular defensive scheme. And the opposing coach might be like, okay, they did that this game. I want them to try that again because now we have counters. We saw that in real game with Tom Thibodeau and Nick Nurse, which is like 2 of the better coaches in basketball, but I didn't think they was going to be playing chess like that. It happened in game. And I can't wait to see what both of these coaches bring in game number 2. Leave a like, subscribe. Tell your friend to tell a friend that if they need their fix of NBA podcasting for the playoffs, this is the place to be. I want to again give y'all a thank you. Some big things are happening in life. Like on Tuesday, my other podcast, Numbers on the Board, is premiering on ESPN2 at 2 o'clock Eastern time. If you're interested, it'll be there. Just me and the rest of the guys talking about basketball. Basically the stuff that you like because you're watching this video. And also, before that premieres at 1 or 2 o'clock, I am flying out to New York to be on First Take for the second time. But I'm in studio, y'all. I'm in studio. The first time I was there, I was here in this basement, right? I had my Enjoy Basketball hat and a hoodie because that's just who I am. But when you go to the studio, you got to do it a little bit bigger. Now, I'm not a suit guy. The only time I wear a suit was to my own wedding. But I did level it up. So you got to tune in to see what that looks like. And I cannot wait. Will the lights be too bright like Jared Allen last year? I don't really know. That live TV thing is a little bit different. So we'll see. And I appreciate y'all's support because if you didn't watch these episodes, you don't watch some other content, they wouldn't be calling me to be on their show. That's just the reality of it. You could be as good as anybody at your job. If you don't have people that's listening or watching, it doesn't really matter. So thank you for that. Let's get into the playoffs though. I mentioned before that my favorite series of all of them was Suns versus Wolves, and it lived up to the hype 100%. I do want to say that my prediction was Suns in 7. I'm not a guy that's going to go back on predictions. I don't care about being right about my predictions. I thought that my logic behind it was pretty sound, but the playoffs were different. One of the questions I posed was what happens with Karl Anthony Towns on the defensive side of the ball? Because I watched those previous two games. They played each other twice in the last week and a half of the season, and one of them was without Karl Anthony Towns, and one of them was with Karl Anthony Towns. And I was just very curious about what they were going to do, because in those two games, it was Anthony Edwards with a Kevin Durant assignment, mostly because I guess what Patrick Beverley said years ago, if you're smaller than Kevin Durant, you can kind of get under his skin a little bit more. And it had been Anthony Edwards until the playoffs, where the ball tips off and it's Karl Anthony Towns guarding Kevin Durant. And I'm like, oh, what could this be about? And I'm watching this game, and it took me about a quarter and a half before I really put it together what Chris Finch and the guys are really doing out there. The first thing was they were not sending help on isolations. Unless the player that had the ball got past the defender, and we're talking about getting 2 feet in the paint, that is when you saw Rudy Gobert slide over and contest at the rim, because that's what he's great at. But other than that, they were completely okay with letting Kevin, Devin, and Brad play one-on-one basketball. And that is just different than what they did in the last two games. See, in the last two games, when you saw Kevin Durant get a touch, specifically a touch against a favorable defender, you did see a second defender, and that let Kevin Durant swing the ball, and that led to a Grayson Allen 3, or led to Bradley Beal dropping 36, and so on and so forth. But in this one, it was straight up. And Kevin Durant was Kevin Durant. You think about Kevin Durant being guarded by Karl Anthony Towns, it went exactly as you could imagine, but that was all they really had. Jaden McDaniels made life hell for Devin Booker the entire time. And the one thing I said when I was trying to make my prediction was this was a defensive legacy series, if you will, for Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is one of the greatest defensive players of all time. Like, I know all of the stuff people say about him. It is objectively a fact. He's about to win his 4th DPOY, and that is an elite class. One thing I absolutely loved about this game is that they let him come up at the point of attack on defense. Rudy Gobert, in the entirety of his career, was a heavy drop defender. He was the best in the world at that. It was one of the reasons why the Utah Jazz defense was so good with Rudy Gobert. He got back, he protected the paint, and if you wanted to take mid-range jump shots completely free, that's cool with us, because we don't really care about that. We'd rather you take that than take an open 3, or we'd rather you take that than get to the basket. And he did it over and over again. He was elite at it. But against the Phoenix Suns, this is a great mid-range shooting team. This is a great pull-up shooting team. So instead of just dropping, Rudy Gobert came out on the defender, or on the offensive player. And some of the times, it was a complete switch. And what did Rudy do? He held his own. Something I've been saying that he's been able to do for years, but people don't be watching these games. Now, some of the times, Kevin Durant, again, made tough shots. He's one of the greatest scorers of all time. But other times, we saw that man get in his chair. There was even one where he stripped Kevin Durant clean. There's no help. That completely nullified, if that's the word, the Grayson Allen effect. Grayson Allen is one of the best three-point shooting percentage guys in basketball. In this one, he took 3 threes and he missed them all. One of them was at the end of a shot clock. It was a grenade. They completely got him out of this game. And they kind of need that man. This was a complete mastermind. And now you see Frank Vogel say, okay, that's the way you're running your things. We're going to play small. We'll play small. And you're going to have to beat us playing big, but we're going to play small. And they did that. And guess what Chris Finch did? Ran his zone. Because they knew that the idea of Rudy Gobert being one-on-one or guarding a player that is sitting at the corner is a recipe not for disaster, but it leaves you very vulnerable on the back end. So they ran his zone. Rudy Gobert didn't have to worry about the corners. He had to worry about that painted area. He's 2-9 in all damn game. And it was a masterclass of scheme and execution. Because it's one thing to have this as a plan, especially something that you haven't really done much against a certain team. It's another thing to execute those things, and that's exactly what they did. Anthony Edwards played great defense and great offense. He was phenomenal in this one. He only averages 14 points per game against the Phoenix Suns thing was completely overblown. And they really did their thing. And this was so fun because there were also times where Chris Finch kind of let the defensive player of the year just play through IQ and let him communicate to his teammates exactly what they're doing on that defensive possession. Like, this is why I love playoff basketball. This is why I love defense. Because you can completely take an all-NBA player like Devin Booker out of a game, and that's what they did. You completely take one of the best role players in the league out of a game with Grayson Allen, and they did that. It was a great game, man. It was a great game. And tonight, I guess the entirety of the playoffs, the last 2 games, or 2 days, the home team won every game. And yeah, that could be relatively boring. I don't know. I didn't feel like it was boring that we didn't get any upsets, if you will. 77.8% of the time, the team that wins game one goes on to win the series, which is a way higher number than I thought it was going to be. So is the winner of game one going to win every one of these series? I would expect not, but it's definitely possible. The Suns need to bounce back heavy. I know the old saying is the series doesn't start until a road team wins a game. That's partially true, I guess. But the Suns need to come out and try to punch these dudes in the mouth again because they got embarrassed. They really did. The Suns are one of those teams that you never know what you're going to get. One day they look phenomenal. Other days they're down 31-4. Never really know. The next game I thought was extremely interesting comes from today. And it's Bucks versus Pacers. Wow. The Damian Lillard experience. And let me double check something. Let me just double check something. I don't think Devin, he scored in the second half at all. I'm talking about Bradley Beal here. I don't think he scored in the second half at all. I'm just going to quickly get these clicks. And he definitely did not. He had 0 points in the second half, and yet in this game with 35 of them things. And this was the most fun Dame game I've watched since the game winner game versus the Kings, I want to say. Maybe. It was nothing the Pacers could really do. Heavily contested three-point shot. If you were dropping, he was taking advantage. If you were coming up point of attack, he was taking advantage. This was a classic Damian Lillard game, and this was such an important win for the Bucks, considering they don't know when Giannis is coming back. So you have a little bit of your pressure alleviated by winning game one. The pressure is all on if you lose this to the Pacers. You're like, oh man, Giannis, you don't really have enough time to really heal up. Because if we lose game number two, it's GG's. The series is over because the team that wins game, or the team that goes up 2-0 wins the series 90-something% of the time. We can't afford that. And Dame said, I got us. And that was phenomenal. And there's the Bucks. As critical as I am of them / Doc Rivers, I have never shut the door completely because the upside of this team, if Chris Middleton is playing like he did tonight, is a championship. The upside is a championship. Now, are they going to get there? I don't know. I doubt it, but I haven't closed the door completely. Chris Middleton, tough shot taker, tough shot maker. And when you get to the playoffs, you need stuff like that. You need players like that. You need people that when it's 4 seconds left on the shot clock, you can throw them the grenade and they make something out of nothing. They gave a lot of post touches to Chris Middleton, and I want to go back to watch a lot of these games or certain parts of these games that happen tonight because I want to count how many times he got the ball on the block and count, same thing with Bobby Portis, how many times he got the ball on the block and how many times they scored out of those actions because it happened time and time again, especially in the second half when it wasn't any Damian Lillard hitting the shots, but it said it was the others. The Pacers had Pascal Siakam give them everything they could have imagined. He was phenomenal tonight. That was kind of it. Now, if there's any silver lining in this one, because losing a basketball game in the playoffs, it's hard to find a silver lining. The Pacers shot 37 jump shots tonight, and 29 of them were considered open. It's a good jump shooting team, a really good jump shooting team. Tonight, those didn't fall. So you ask yourself, if we shoot a little bit better, we're in this game. Should we be panicking because we don't believe that we're going to shoot this bad again? That's the playoffs. I have seen teams have multiple games where they shoot this bad. And that is a shot in the foot. It's wraps if you do that. I have to talk about my boy Tyrese Halliburton because he was not aggressive at all. There should never be a game. Well, let me just double check this. Let me see. There should never be a game where Andrew Nembhard attempts one less shot than you, where TJ McConnell attempts 6 more shots than you in 20 less minutes. There should never be a game where Aaron Nesmith attempted more shots. He was not that crazy of a thing because he's a good shot taker and maker. But as the guy, as the all-NBA caliber player, the best player on the team, we could not go into a playoff game and take 7 shots. Now, this is the first playoff game of his entire life. I don't believe this is the Tyrese Halliburton we'll get in game 2 through however long this series lasts. But in a game 1 that was one that you could have taken because of the advantage you had of not having Giannis, I wanted him to be more aggressive. Now, the entirety of this offense is really like revolving around Tyrese Halliburton finding his teammates and getting open looks. And again, as I just read you the stats, they did that. They got open look after open look after open look and just missed them all. But if you are the guy you are, and I know how good Tyrese Halliburton is and can be, after watching them for the last couple seasons, and then from the draft and on. When your teammates miss the 6th straight shot, as the guy, it's just normal for the guy to be like, hold on, I got us. Let me settle some things down and me take and make a tough shot or a big shot or get to the basket. There were plenty of times where I wanted to see him turn that corner on the pick and roll. It just didn't happen. He's one of the best passing players in all of basketball, but the greatest passers that we know can also flip it on when you need to. Jokic, the greatest passer in basketball. You know what he did to the Lakers? He flipped it on. Luka Doncic, amazing passer. They flip it on tonight. Well, he can turn it on. Chris Paul, one of the greatest passers of all time, can turn it on. That mid-range jump shot that Chris Paul patented was the best shot you can get in basketball for like a 4-year stretch. Not anymore. Lord knows, not anymore. But the greatest passers also know when it's my time. It's my time to eat, especially when we're losing this game. Because Pascal, again, gave you everything you could have imagined, 36 of them things. That's a beautiful game from Pascal. The other struggle. And when you have that, you have that. And what else is in my notes here? Want Hallie to turn on them switch. Yep. Oh, the Rick Carlisle rotation thing. Rick Carlisle is a good coach. Great coach, maybe a stretch. There's no way he should be running a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-man rotation in the playoff game. Not in game one. Hell, never. Unless you got blown out where you were pulling your starters with 5 minutes ago, an 11-man rotation is nasty. And it's specifically nasty when part of your rotation sees it that your two best players, Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton, you have times where neither of them are in the lineup. That boggled my mind. And I know it happened in the regular season. Hell, that happens for a lot of teams in the regular season. But the best teams, the teams that are competing to win championships, are not going to have it where their two best players are on the bench at the same time. You need to stagger these minutes. It happened in the first half for, I timed it myself, 1 minute and 48 seconds. In that time span, the Bucks went on a 10-2 run. It's not very good. You're already playing catch up. You were already down early. And now you give up a 10-2 run because you don't have Tyrese or Pascal Siakam on the court. You just have to stagger because it's not like you have a Malik Monk. You don't have Manu Ginobili. You don't have a great 6-man to come in. And granted, TJ McConnell has been phenomenal for the last 3 months. I don't want to take that away from him, but he's not Manu. He's not Malik Monk. He's not the guy that you want to take over a game for a 4-minute stretch. They don't have that. So instead, it has to be Tyrese by himself or it has to be Pascal by himself. And in the second half, I don't remember it happening at all. But in that first half, that 10-2 run was enough for me to notice, and it just couldn't happen. I thought they did a good job contesting shots throughout the entirety of the game. Damian Lillard was just on a burner. And again, they have tough shot takers and tough shot makers. And this was a series that Malik Beasley said, hell, when we see them in the playoffs, he said this in January, by the way, when we see them in the playoffs, we go bust their ass. And in game one, they did exactly that without Giannis. So wake up call for the Indiana Pacers and see how they retaliate. Next game we got is Clippers versus Cavs. So the Clippers have no Kawhi Leonard and they win. Now, I've seen conflicting reports, right? I've seen conflicting reports. I got into not an argument, but a disagreement on my other show Numbers on the Board. And in this one, a week ago, Tyronn Lue was asked about the status of Kawhi Leonard. And what he said was basically, I don't know. I posed a question, could this be him playing chess? Because even if he knows that Kawhi Leonard's not playing, why should I tell the media that so we have it so that Jason Kidd can just make one game plan, which is how do we defend without Kawhi Leonard, but leave the door open so that we have Jason Kidd and his staff do a little bit more work and so on and so forth. Luka Doncic after this game came up to the podium and said, hell, we only prepared for if Kawhi Leonard was playing. And then Jason Kidd came up to the podium and said, hell, we prepared both ways. I don't know what it was. But they did not look prepared at all. We saw the greatest ISO player of my lifetime, of our generation, maybe of ever, in James Harden, dominate a playoff game. There's a lot of memes going around like when your best player is down, there's no better player to have on your team than James Harden, because over the last couple of years, of course, when Joel Embiid was out, he had that 40-point game and so on and so forth. And then today, his final stat line ended up being 28, 8, and 2 rebounds, but he was phenomenal in the pick and roll with Zubac, which is a great arc for Zoo. Again, we're only talking game one. Who knows how the rest of the series is going to go? But this is a great arc for Zoo because 3 years ago when they played against each other, Luka Doncic tormented that man. He had to sit down next to coach because he could not hold his own against Luka. I mean, not a lot of people can, but I thought that Zubac was as dominant as he could possibly be on both sides of the floor. Where early in his game, the James Harden Zoo combination was looking Shaq Kobe-esque. It was looking, I'm trying to think of other pick and roll duos that might have been ridiculous. It was looking phenomenal. And there's not a big gap between the Clippers bigs versus the Mavs big. Hell, you can argue that you would take the Cavs or the Mavs bigs over the Clippers big, but in this one, the Clippers bigs dominated. And part of that, a lot of that is just having a guy like James Harden to set the table. I mean, it's been talked about before how Zoo and James, when James first got there, spent hours together after practices to make sure that James knew exactly what to throw it to Zoo, where Zoo felt comfortable catching, and so on and so forth. In this game, we saw a lot of different coverages for James Harden, but I know one that he loved a lot is when Maxi Kleber came on that floor, they were playing drop after drop after drop, and James was like, "You just gonna give me the open shot? All right, bet." And if they didn't get the open shot, it was step back James Harden. This was a vintage James Harden game. And that's great considering the last month and a half of the season, he was averaging 15 points per game on bad shooting splits. Very, very big win for the Clippers. Many people picked the Cavs, me included. I mean, the Mavs. I keep saying Cavs. The Mavs, me included. But this one, you got to feel great about if you are the Clippers. You have to feel great about. And my favorite thing about all of this is not just James Harden and the pick and roll. It's not just the bank shot three that Paul George hit or Amir Coffey stepping in and hitting a few shots early in his game. My favorite thing about this from the Clippers perspective, that anytime you saw that the Mavericks trying to get back into this game, Tyronn Lue called a timeout and got a bucket after the timeout. An out of timeout bucket time and time again. That is how you play your timeouts, other coaches. I'm not thinking of anyone particularly. That's how you play it. The opposing team is starting to get some momentum and get back in this game. That's a 7-0 run, timeout. Let's go run one of our sideline out of the bounds to get an easy look. And it happened. And one of the times they missed. But I counted 3 of them that went in. And like that, you cannot ask for a better coaching situation from them. In this one, obviously that second quarter is the one that everybody's going to talk about. In this second quarter, 8 total points for the Dallas Mavericks. They also generated a bunch of open looks that just did not fall. Daniel Gafford got into foul trouble very early, and it was GG's from that point on. I think he ended up tweaking his ankle too, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, I need to see more Josh Green. Josh Green in this one was good in the 9 minutes that he played. I just can't watch Tim Hardaway Jr. get feasted on by Paul George or James Harden for a 7-game series, bro. You have to cut it. And I know that his role on this team is to be a microwave, hit some shots occasionally, but if he's giving everything up on the defensive side of the ball, you just got to let Josh Green run. You got to let him run. Luka Doncic and company, Kyrie Irving was awful in that first half, got it together with a perfect third quarter and everything. But this was a rough one. This is a rough one if you're a Mavs fan, because without Kawhi Leonard, and again, we don't know if Kawhi will be back for game 2, game 3. Hell, we don't know if he'll be back at all in this series. But this is one of the ones that you think that you should go in there, you should win, and Staples. And honestly, the fans were showing out in that. I was delighted to hear all the Clippers fans, because I've been to a few Clippers games, and one of them being the playoff game. And I don't want to say it was 50-50 split, but it definitely felt more away fans than it should. More Clippers fans in totality, but more away fans than it should. But this one was like all Clippers all the time. And I loved that the atmosphere was great. This is a huge, huge win for those guys. Next game, we got Cavs versus Magic. Shout out to Evan Mobley, man. Evan Mobley hit 2 threes in the first quarter. I almost fell out my chair. Because the whole game plan, one of the game plans for the Orlando Magic is let that man shoot, leave him open, clog that paint, get all through all the passing lanes, and make sure that Donovan Mitchell doesn't get ahead of steam to the basket. And they were doing that. But if Evan Mobley's hitting the shots like this, again, since February, he's been shooting 40-something%. Not a high volume, but 40-something%. He hit 2 in the first quarter, and that kind of changed a lot. It changed so much that in this game, Evan Mobley and Jared Allen played 23 minutes together. That is 6 more minutes than average, because usually they stagger. Like most good coaches do, they stagger the better players. And one of the reasons why JB has been staggering is because, well, sometimes the offense, especially late in the games, you have these 2 bigs that aren't spacers. It makes it more difficult for Donovan. It makes it more difficult for Garland. But if Evan's hitting the shots, you feel comfortable with them playing 23 minutes together. And now if he's hitting the shots, that front court is one of the best defensive front courts in basketball. And you saw that. The defense showed up and showed out. Now, granted, I've said this, I think, in every single one of these series I've talked about. The Magic generated open looks, but that was by design. When you are the 24th ranked the 3-point shooting team in basketball, hell yeah, we're going to let you shoot time and time again. And that's what happened. And I don't know what happened to Franz Wagner's jumper. I thought earlier in the season, like he's going to get it to, he hasn't. He hasn't. Part of Orlando missing, part of them, their offense being so bad, it's just they missed every single three that they put up. Their half-court offense was atrocious. It was the worst half-court offense of the playoffs so far. And that's saying something because that Knicks, did you see the Knicks in the half-court last night? But it was tough. And then I saw a stat after this game, and it made me go back and rewatch the majority of it. Paolo Banchero's pick and rolls generated 0 points. Not on a pass, not on a bucket, 0 points. That is an insane number. Considering the volume of them, it's just, it felt fake. So I rewatched it. And that's a real number. That was a real number. Donovan Mitchell had a great game one. And neither of these two teams shot well, but the reason I took the Cavs in the series because I thought their offensive upside was just higher. It was very interesting to see John Isaac starting. He had started the last 2 games of the season, but I thought because the Cavaliers are a bigger team that they would go big as well. They decided not to, and that kind of limited the amount of switching that they had to do defensively, which I kind of liked a little bit, but ultimately, when you miss every single shot you shoot, you're going to lose the basketball game. Knicks versus 76ers Knicks. I mentioned earlier about the chess match. I love the way the Knicks guarded Jalen Brunson in this game. I'm sorry, the 76ers guarded Jalen Brunson. They made everything that he did extremely, extremely tough. And in this game, you saw Josh Hart hit 3 threes in the last 6-ish minutes. And part of the scheme, the game plan for the 76ers is we'll live with that. Josh Hart's a 31% three-point shooter. Last night, they lost that game, but I bet they didn't hold their heads low because they forced the Knicks to basically take the shots they wanted late in the game. Again, it's just a make-and-miss league, and Josh Hart put on a masterclass in the last 6 minutes because he was struggling before that. But those are the shots that the 76ers were prepared to give up. They didn't want Jalen Brunson to get his footwork, get to that mid-range area. They didn't want to let him get to the basket. They didn't want to let him get an open three-pointer. So if that means that the others have to shoot, so be it. It reminded me so much of in the Knicks versus Hawks series a few years back. That was a year that RJ Barrett shot 41% from 3 in the regular season. But what happened in the postseason? No team guarded him. They were like, this is the fakest 41% I've ever seen. And if RJ Barrett's hitting 4 threes, 5 threes, and we lose, so be it. And though, again, Josh Hart shot 31% from 3, it's a 10% difference. They were completely okay with giving that up. Josh Hart hit 4 threes in this game. He hasn't hit 4 threes in a game in months. Again, if you're a 76ers guy, you probably feel okay, especially considering a big run that the Knicks went on was after Joel Embiid self-lobbed to himself and looked like he tore his knee again. The scariest thing, man. I'm watching this game with my boy Pierre. Pierre is a diehard Knicks fan. And even he was like, no. Because nobody wants to see an injury. Nobody wants to see an injury. Even if you're rooting against that team, you don't want to see an injury. But JoJo powered through it. And I thought he was dominant in this game on both sides of the floor. There was a Twitter thread that I saw, and I wish I would have linked it so I could give the credit. But part of it was breaking down the defensive scheme on this in the second half. And part of it might have been because Joel Embiid was injured and we didn't want him going through a lot of different actions. But the way they were kind of playing their pick and roll is that if Joel Embiid's guy was the one screening, someone else from the opposite or the strong side came over to take over the pick and roll for him, and Joel Embiid just filled the role. And I thought that was very, very interesting, where it's like Kelly Oubre is the guy guarding the pick and roll instead of Joel Embiid. And again, it might have been just because we didn't want to see Joel Embiid moving so much, or maybe that was just where they found most of their success. And I thought it worked really well, except for eventually we saw Tom Thibodeau say, okay, so they helping off the weak side, so let's put our good shooters on the strong side. And because OG Anunoby's on the weak side, then he put OG Anunoby on the strong side, and it was an open 3 for OG, and he hit it. So it was, again, just a chess match, back and back again. It was perfect. Miles McBride. Cannot go this segment without mentioning Miles McBride and Mitchell Robinson, because they both were phenomenal. A second quarter masterclass. I think Miles McBride had 13 points in that second quarter alone off the bench, and that's just great for a guy that doesn't have many minutes in the playoffs. The injury scares me, though. I will say it again. I love Joel Embiid, love watching him play. I hate to see him go down. And that was such a ferocious play that he went down on. I thought it was over with. And luckily, again, he came back, played through it. But again, when you think about him having to do this for a 7-game series, and if they want to go win that championship, a couple more 7-game series, Not feeling great about it. Lakers versus Nuggets is probably the one I should have opened up with, but it is what it is. LeBron James' first half was a masterclass. Everywhere. Offensively, making the right play, hitting the shots. The amount of progression we've seen in LeBron James jump shooting. Again, we're talking about year 21. It's not a surprise to anybody. He's now a plus jump shooter. But I listened to Mind the Game, episode 1, when it first came out, or episode 2, and LeBron was kind of talking about how envious he was of certain people like JJ Redick who knew how to shoot a basketball. How they had consistency in their jump shot, and how he used to lean, and then his guide hand helped too much, and it was no fluidity. And now he's just like really a good jump shooter. And the first 8-9 years of his career, 10 years of his career, he couldn't hit a jumper. And now he's hitting multiple. He's just taking them. LeBron and Anthony Davis are both phenomenal in this one. LeBron in the second half, a lot rougher than the first half. But the thing that's scary about the Nuggets is LeBron and AD, you could argue, had better games collectively. Now, Jokic was an absolute monster. But collectively, you can argue that those two players on the Lakers had a better or equal game to the best two players on the Nuggets. And it didn't matter. What, they go on one run to make it look interesting? And then you just saw the Nuggets go on anytime they got a live ball rebound, it was a bucket. Time and time again. And I'm very curious to see what happens with D'Angelo Russell. One of my X factors of this was him, because last year in the playoffs, he couldn't play. He played 23 minutes per game. He averaged 6 points. He shot 20% from three. He was awful, right? He had to sit next to coach Darvin Ham. And this is a redemption, because right now, D'Angelo Russell's like their third most important player if they're going to go on a run. But in game number 1, he was bad. And not just missing shots bad, because I am a firm believer that you can have a good game if you're missing shots. But if you're missing shots, and you also are missing rotations, that's too many misses. There are a few times where D'Angelo Russell was completely lost, and that led to a KCP open look. Or it led to a KCP open look where somebody else closed out on the KCP slid and one more. It's just too much. Gabe Vincent was a guy that I mentioned in my preview. I'm curious to see how much he plays, because in the play-in tournament, he was great in the amount of minutes he got. I wonder if we see more Gabe Vincent in game number 2, because they could desperately need him. Anthony Davis, I thought he settled for way too many threes in the second half. Him shooting 0 for 4 for 3, I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And the reason I say that is because when you go against the different Nuggets, every single one of these possessions matter, because they're a low turnover, great offensive team in the half court. They had 4 turnovers tonight, or I think it was 4 turnovers. I'm not Googling, but 4-ish turnovers. And an Anthony Davis 3-point shot is one that will be there. I have the same complaint about Draymond Green, and Draymond Green shot the 3-point ball well this season, so maybe previous year's Draymond. But if Draymond is taking a 3-point shot with 14 or more seconds on the shot clock, that is a bad possession, because we know that same exact shot will be there if 4 seconds are on the clock, if 3 seconds are on the clock. So let's run into some other stuff to see if we have a better shot. And 3 of the 4 Anthony Davis 3-point shots came with 15 or more seconds left on the shot clock. That's too much. One of them, I'm giving them some wiggle room. It was 1 minute left and they were down by a certain amount of points. They just need to get 3-point shots up. But 3 of the 4 3-pointers he took will be there. They're not closing out on that. Even one of them was like, maybe I want to give him a little bit of wiggle room there too, because one of them he got, and there was an opportunity to one more to D'Angelo Russell, but he took it himself, because hell, D'Angelo Russell wasn't hitting shots either. But I would like to see Anthony Davis take less 3-pointers, especially if they're early in the shot clock. And I know Darvin Ham and them have been trying to get him to take more threes, but I went through it. 4 3-point attempts is the most he's had in a half all season long. You pick right now to shoot 4 3-pointers and miss all of them in the first game of the playoffs against the best team in basketball? I don't like that. I don't like that. But this just shows how much better the Nuggets are than their competition, because I thought the Lakers played a good game, but the Nuggets played a great one. And that was without Jamal Murray being a supernova version of himself. Next series we want to talk about is Celtics versus Heat. One of the series, the least watched game of the day for me. The thing that I liked the most about it, especially early on, was the patience that Jason Tatum played with. A lot of it was just him finding the right play, or finding the right player for an open shot. Eventually, they went to that zone in the second quarter, and Sam Howell just shot them out of it. It's just not, the Celtics are a team that will happily let you play a zone against them. And yeah, I'm sure if you play the zone again in game number 3, they might miss more shots than they make. But Sam Hauser and those guys know how to shoot, man. They made a lot of 3-point shots today. And this is a Celtics win of a series. If you go to FanDuel Sportsbook, they are minus 50,000 to win the series. You look at the other series, it's like the team that won game number 1 is like minus 154. No, The Celtics are minus 50,000. If you put $10 down and the Celtics win the series, you get 2 pennies back. That's how good the Celtics are and how beat up the Heat are, / how weird that offense can really be. Jaime Jaquez was phenomenal. Love to see him hooping. I think if there's any silver line to all of this, because again, I think the Miami Heat are losing this in maybe 5. Like I don't have a lot of hope for what I've been seeing from them over the last 3 games. If the silver lining is that Jaime Jaquez getting playoff experience, and Nikola Jovic again continues to surprise me over the last month or so of the NBA season and the postseason. So that's kind of cool. Tyler Hero is probably going to struggle for the majority of the series, and the reason I say that is because the way that I've seen people guard Tyler Hero very well is to have defenders that can bump him on his movements. And that happened a ton today. It happened a ton in that first game versus the 76ers. They have people that are just willing to put a little shoulder into him, get a little bit more body-to-body contact, and that drives him off his spots, and that makes his shots infinitely more difficult. I hated the fact that Jason Tatum played off 12 minutes in the fourth quarter. It could have ended really bad. The Caleb Martin thing could have ended really, really bad. And luckily he got up, he popped up immediately, and he was a real professional about all of it. But that could have been really, really bad. And as somebody who's followed a team with a coach that played his star player more minutes than he should, and you're trying to go on a deep run, I would just hope that Joe Mazzulla decides not to do that in the future. And I understand that DeLon Wright hit 4 threes in the fourth quarter and tried to make it interesting. They could have survived. I saw what Sam Hauser was doing. They could have survived. And hopefully you want to rest Tatum a little bit more for the next game. The last series, again, as I mentioned, I missed a bulk of this one, so I don't have a ton to say about Pelicans versus Nuggets other than it was an ugly playoff game. And I saw people on Twitter complaining. I'm like, what is going on? We get complaints about the scoring being too high, too many fouls, so on, and then we get a game like this, a grinded out game with the youngest 1 seed in NBA history, and then a team that is as physical as hell, and it ends up being sub 100 scores on both sides, and y'all are complaining? Cut it out, man. This was a great game. There was a few times in this one, y'all know I got all the Trey Murphy III stock imaginable, where he looked phenomenal, you know what I'm saying? But there was like 2 shots in this one where he heat checked himself from like the logo late in the game. I'm like, Trey, it's gotta be a better look than that. But the physicality really, really played its part. In this game, you saw 18 offensive rebounds from the Pelicans. And in that, like 5 of those happened on 1 possession late in the game, and they did not even score. Let's see, second chance points. Oh, I don't have the stat in front of me. I wonder how many second chance points that led to. I mean, that was the biggest question, one of the biggest question marks about OKC in their run. Valanciunas was bruising Chet all day long. And that was one of the determining factors of this being really, really close. I thought the defense that Herb Jones played on Shea throughout the course of this game was phenomenal. Obviously, Shea hit that big and 1 late in it, but he was struggling until that point. Chet, huge block on Larry Nance was just cool to see. And I kind of like the fact that Willie Green is so okay with telling his better players to sit the hell down because you don't got it tonight. It's one of the most impactful things if you're on this team and you are Dyson Daniels or you're Najee Marshall or you're Jose Alvarado, that you don't feel like no matter what I do, I'm not going to play over this guy. Willie Green is like, no, who is the best team, the best 5 that can help us win this game? And he'll go with that one. In this last possession, Cason Wallace ended up having the poke away on CJ, and CJ still got a very good look out of it, but ultimately the OKC Thunder win. Cason, one of my guys, he had a no-dip 3-pointer in this one. Chef's kiss, y'all know that's one of my favorite things in basketball. A funny thing is Jalen Williams, not J-Dub, but the other Jalen Williams, hit a 3, and then the broadcast showed J-Dub's stats and added 3 points as if J-Dub hit the shot, and they like immediately cut it down because like, oh no, that's the other Jalen Williams. That's not the Jalen Williams that I put up 19 today. But either way, I would have to rewatch this first 3 quarters, I would say, to have any real takeaways to kind of see what the Pelicans played differently. It was up for grabs for them. They let it slip through their fingers, specifically on that play where Larry Nance missed that dunk. And then again, they got like 4 or 5 offensive rebounds on one play and was not able to capitalize at all. And that was like the nail in the coffin. I'm excited for game 2. That game 1 was a lot better than I anticipated. Both teams played phenomenal defense. They were saying on the broadcast, this was the only matchup of the first round where both teams were top 10 in offense and defense. Kind of fun. And that is every single playoff series so far. I appreciate everybody tuning in, man. And let me know what you think If your team is in the playoffs, you're lucky. Let me know in the comment section, are you worried about game number one? Did they play well? Some things that you enjoyed, some things you didn't enjoy. And for the other people that's sitting at home with your favorite team not in the playoffs, let's just have some fun and watch this hoops and not be too critical of the players that don't play well. Is that too much to ask? I don't know. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all soon.